welcome back. I am so excited to have our guest here today, Sister Desiré Anne-Marie Findlay. Sister Desiré is a Felician sister, a dancer, and the vocation outreach minister for Our Lady of Hope province. Sister Desiré, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me here.
Oh, thanks. So Desiré, I think it's amazing that you're a Felician sister. I love reading what you write and watching your videos online. It's so cool. I'll provide links to her YouTube channel below and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about your decision to join the Felician Sisters and also about your decision to not wear the veil?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in New Mexico. I went to public school my whole life. And so I didn't really know any sisters, but when I was in catechism class, we would learn all about like saints, and so many of them were nuns and sisters that I just thought that they have to be doing something really amazing. So I always was attracted to religious life. And then when I was in college, I went on a pilgrimage. My friend invited me. It was a 100-mile walk, so it took a week long. But on the walk were two Felician sisters. And I'd never heard of Felician Sisters before, never knew they existed. But these two were so attractive to me. They were just like so much themselves. So one was very gentle and the other was just like this very loud extrovert. And I just thought, this is amazing that they can be themselves and still be in this community. So it told me, in this congregation, there's space for everybody. There's space for you to be yourself. And I just thought, I've admired religious life for the longest time. So maybe this is something that I can actually be a part of. And so I wanted to visit them, and I said, "Oh, where do you live? Or is it far?" And they said, "Oh, we're in Rio Rancho." It was 15 minutes from my house. And I was like, "What?" They've been there this whole time, and I never knew. But as soon as I started visiting, it just felt like home. I felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. And I thought, even if I end up leaving, even if I want to get married and have children, I just thought, if I need to first know whether this is for me or not, because I've been so curious about it, so attracted to this life, I have to find out. So, and they had been inviting me for retreats. They'd invited me for some celebrations, and they were helping me see how my gifts and my talents could be used for greater purpose. And I don't think they were even planning to do that. It was just, their way of welcoming. And I thought, this community is helping me see that. And, if I wasn't getting there on my own, then maybe this is the place for me. So I decided to enter, and that was pretty much right after college. I chose to begin the journey. And it took, I think it's 9 years to make final vows. So that was last year I made final vows after being with the community about 9 years. And it's been a pleasure. But in the beginning, so we have like several different stages of formation. But after the first couple of years, we become novices. And at that point, we're, in our community anyway, we're allowed to decide what we're going to wear. So whether we're going to wear a habit with a veil or like a less formal habit. And as a novice, I was like, oh yeah, sisters wear habits. I'll wear a veil and everything. And even though I'd never really thought about it, and even though the sisters that I had met didn't even wear a veil, I just, I didn't even pay attention. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll wear a veil in a traditional habit. And so I did for about 5 years. So after novitiate, I made my first vows. I went into teaching, and I probably about halfway through my teaching, which I did for 4 years, I taught at an all-girls high school. About halfway through that, I was like, maybe this is not for me. Maybe this is, the habit is more of like a barrier. And I started to see that even just in my own personal life, because I know for myself that I have a hard time being vulnerable or being honest, even with myself, to say I'm having a bad day or I'm impatient this morning. And so having this symbol applied to me told me, well, I don't have bad days. I have to be like happy all the time and like always prayerful, and just created like this outward image And I was focused on that instead of what was going on interiorly. And at the same time, the Black Lives Matter movement was, the phrase sort of started because Trayvon Martin had been murdered and the man who killed him was acquitted. And so 3 women were like, we need to do something about this. And so that raised some awareness in the country, and, not as much as it has now, but even that back then. And so for me, it raised some awareness and even my own awareness of my identity, my cultural identity as a woman of color. And so I thought, well, I want to own that. I want to fully be, a woman of color and embrace that, not just for myself, but because it matters to other people. And I was seeing that it mattered to other people, that they had somebody to look up to, who represented them culturally. And so I thought, well, if it's not helping me with my interior life to wear a veil and a traditional habit, and it's not helping me to really enter more fully into other people's lives, then maybe I should let this go. So I decided, because within the Felician community, we can choose, like I said, to wear, something simplified. I said, I'm going to go with something more simple. And so that's how I got to wearing what I do now.
Oh, you're so great, Sister Desiree. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Thanks. And I would love to know, I asked you this question back in the summer, but I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this now. Can you tell us about your thoughts on the movement, the protests for racial justice happened this summer and still happening now? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of ironic because I was just talking to one of my sister friends in a different community, and we're talking about Advent and just like what Advent represents to us and why it's meaningful for each of us. And we both had different reasons. So I was like, I love that it's a season of waiting and, it's calling me to be present to what's happening now, even if I don't see the growth, in the dark or the quiet. But it's a preparation, time for preparation and growth. And for her, she said, well, I love it's a season of hope, that we're looking forward to something, looking forward to transformation. And so I bring that up because then in the course of that conversation, I was like, I don't know that I'm a very hopeful person. And she's like, really? So we talked about what that even means. And, that I said I would consider myself maybe more dedicated because I do continue to work for, justice or stand up for things that I believe in. And she was like, well, why do you stand up for it if you don't feel like things could change? And I said, well, because I feel like even just being dedicated to the work tells the people that I'm standing up with or standing up for that they matter, that what they're crying out for matters. And so even if nothing changes, at least the people who were crying out feel that they were heard. So then we went into a whole conversation and she's like, but that is hope, that is transformation. So it kind of like came full circle. But to me, that's, I think, specifically the peaceful protests, that's what those do, is that says, we hear you and we hear the cry of the people in this country who are suffering injustice. And we, maybe nothing's going to change right now, but we hear you, we see you, and we want to be a part of hoping that things can change. So I feel, and in the past, we've seen that protests have changed things, have changed policies, have changed countries, and that's what we continue to strive for, is to say that it's possible. It's happened before, we can do it now. And so I was able to attend one small peaceful protest here in Pennsylvania, and was very happy to stand with a whole different array of people, all kinds of different cultures, and just amazing to see how many people are wanting to hear, wanting to be attentive, and stand up with those who are crying out.
Thank you, Sister Desiree. And my last question is, what does nonviolence mean to you?
Mm-hmm. I think when I think of just violence in general, I feel like it depends on how we see the other or those who are different from us. So if I treat the other as a threat, then they become an enemy then that turns into violence because that's somebody I have to be in, fighting against. And so nonviolence would, to me, be working to embrace the other, even if it's not comfortable, even if it's difficult, even if it requires personal change, or even requires me to let go of something that I once held valuable, like, let's say I'm in a position of power or a position of privilege, and then I have to let that go in order to say, well, I stand with this group of people because they're hurting. Even if I don't agree with, like, let's say their lifestyle, or I don't agree with, how they're crying out for justice, to be able to say, I embrace their struggle, and I embrace them as a person. I think that's what nonviolence means. That's what it means to really be brother and sister and in this human race, in this family that God has given us, is to say, maybe I don't agree with, or maybe it requires some personal loss, but I can stand with them because that's my brother or that's my sister.
That's beautiful, Sister Desiree. Thank you again for sharing and for being here. I'm so grateful to you, and you inspire me so much. So thank you.
Thanks for creating the space for this conversation and for continuing yourself to work for peace.